I have mastered the art of not making an effort, often straying off the track. I want to talk about my way of living and thinking. What's important is not money or time, but thought. This time, I will explain the book 1% Effort written by Hiroyuki-san. This book is recommended for those who don't want to make unnecessary efforts, and wish to understand the world correctly and live as happily as possible. The book, written by Hiroyuki-san, discusses smart living, which means making only the most cost-effective efforts. In other words, it's about identifying the most crucial 1%, and putting in effort only in that area. This is the way of living that Hiroyuki-san has always practiced. Firstly, as usual, let me announce the conclusion of this video. The conclusion is to speak intelligently, as doing so can greatly benefit one's life. Key points to consider include always keeping one hand free, maintaining life's priorities, understanding how the world works, and trying things you've never done before. In this video, I will explain in the following order: 1. The meaning of life and tips on prioritizing life through 1% effort. Please enjoy learning about how to become a unique person. The meaning of life and 1% effort. The first important premise is why people live. Let's think about the meaning of life, an important premise. Hiroyuki-san discusses the meaning of life in this book. He believes that there is no meaning to life, similar to plants and bacteria. Gender on Earth is only serving as a part of the Earth's heat circulation system. Considering this, it's better to live as happily as possible until death. The goal should be to increase the total amount of happiness. Hiroyuki-san has always lived with this mindset, advocating that one should live as happily as possible until death. This approach is also shared by Takafumi Hori, who says, "Life is just a grand way of killing time." It seems that both of these individuals share a similar view on the meaning of life. Personally, I also agree with the opinions of these two individuals. There's no particular meaning to life, so I think it's fine to live life in a carefree and enjoyable manner. With this understanding, Hiroyuki-san does not believe there is a particular meaning to life. Hence, it's best to live as happily as possible until death. Let's keep in mind that he has this premise. Now, moving on, based on this, I'll talk about the 1% effort. The 1% effort is about making only those efforts that have extremely high cost effectiveness. It's about doing only efforts with excellent cost performance. Hiroyuki-san has been practicing such 1% efforts continuously. Hiroyuki-san went to Chuo University after spending a year as a Ronin. The reason for choosing Chuo University was that he didn't want to study for entrance exams. He chose political economy because it had the thinnest glossary and applied to universities, where he could pass with his academic ability. The exam format was multiple choice, requiring minimal effort. He decided to go to university just to have the qualification of a graduate. However, even after entering university, he didn't have the intention of mastering studies, but rather enjoyed a moratorium life, idly passing time while taking the minimum credits needed. When you only put in the minimum effort, you end up with a lot of spare time. When you have spare time, you want to do something. That's how Hiroyuki-san, as a pastime and instead of part-time work, established a website development company with his friends. Later, this led to the creation of 2channel. This is a brief example of Hiroyuki-san's 1% effort. The key to 1% effort is making effort that captures the essence and having spare time. It's about identifying important points, and putting in effort only in those areas. For example, in Hiroyuki-san's case, first, he chose political economy as it seemed easier at the stage of choosing subjects for the entrance exam. This is one point. Then, he chose to get credits with minimal effort just to graduate. Another point is that he started a website production business, which was promising at the time, and the importance of having spare time. Hiroyuki-san highly values having free time. He repeatedly emphasizes in the book to not fill up your schedule, create margins, and keep one hand free. The reason is that if you are not free, you can't seize opportunities. Hiroyuki-san started his business because he had free time. He succeeded because of it. First, you need to create the leisure to do something you want to do. Things you don't want to do or don't need to do should be utterly avoided. That way, you become free, and when you are free, you want to do something. Starting something out of internal motivation, interest, or whim tends to be more enjoyable and successful. That's why having free time is very important. Don't fill both hands, keep one free. Now, let's summarize the content so far. First, as an important premise, there is no particular meaning to life. Therefore, it's best to live as happily as possible until death. Setting the goal to increase the total amount of happiness is ideal. Based on this premise, the 1% effort is effective. The 1% effort is about making only efforts that have extremely high cost effectiveness, where the key is to make efforts that capture the essence. By doing so, you have spare time. Next, let's discuss the tips for determining life's priorities. Tips for determining life's priorities in life. Hiroyuki-san says it's better to maintain priorities in life, as it makes life easier to navigate. The reason is that doing so tends to increase the total amount of happiness. Time is finite, only 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Therefore, it's better to spend time on things that are important to you, as it makes life more enjoyable. Things that aren't important should be neglected. For this, it is necessary to maintain your priorities. For example, your priorities might be not compromising on meals, wanting to travel abroad at least twice a year, or prioritizing time with children. In Hiroyuki-san's case, the most important thing is sleep. Sleeping when tired and waking up when desired is his top priority. Likes and dislikes vary greatly from person to person, and priority should be determined by oneself. Incidentally, the method I always recommend for determining one's priorities and clarifying values has been explained in a previous video. I thoroughly explained it in a video, analyzing a book written by mentalist Daigo-san, The Power of Objectivity. Hiroyuki-san also explains in his book about determining priorities. One of the tips he mentions in the book is to prioritize things that can only be done now. Is it something that can be done later, or is it something that can only be done now? Are there any other alternatives? These considerations should be the criteria for determining priorities. For example, being a high school student is a 3-year only experience. Hence, engaging in club activities, doing silly things with friends, or studying hard for university entrance exams are things that can only be done during high school. I've used the example of high school students as it's the most straightforward, but this applies to college students and working adults too. There are always things that can only be done now, and things that can be done later. It's effective to think about your current options, in terms of what can only be done now versus later. Next, the second tip is that honing a specific skill is a cost-effective effort. Developing expertise is a priority, as Hiroyuki-san says. This is the second tip. The world operates at a high school student's level if there's a manual. Even high school students can do it. In other words, the world runs on jobs that anyone can do. However, jobs that anyone can do tend to pay less, and are at high risk of disappearing with the advent of AI in the future. Therefore, if you consider cost effectiveness, it's better not to do jobs that anyone can do. Jobs at a high school level are likely to be cut first and pay low. Therefore, it's better to develop your specialty, and become able to earn money cost effectively. Hiroyuki-san says he learned that the world operates at a high school level, by doing part-time jobs. Hiroyuki-san experienced 9 different part-time jobs. During his university days, he worked as a convenience store clerk, in a supermarket's deli section, at a ramen shop, posting flyers for underground videos, handling calls for a mobile phone company, as a tutor, cleaner, pizza delivery person, and for Sagawa Express. From these 9 part-time jobs, he learned that the world is easygoing and surprisingly well run. Companies might seem well organized at first glance, but once you're inside, you realize that it's not such a big deal. The world is easygoing and heads in a generally correct direction, says Hiroyuki-san. When you actually join as a part-time worker, you'll be surprised to see how easygoing the world is and how well it functions. Experiencing this is surprisingly important. Just by experiencing it, the hurdle for starting your own business significantly lowers. You come to understand the ins and outs of how things work in a company. Thus, people with high pride who think they couldn't possibly do such boring jobs without trying them first, are at a loss in life, according to Hiroyuki-san. He says it's better to enjoy everything and take it a bit lightly. I personally very much agree that the world is easygoing and well run. Similarly, I did various part-time jobs during my university days. I worked as a tutor, at an izakaya, as an apparel shop, staff, in a restaurant kitchen, and even did odd jobs, like wearing costumes and playing with children, conducting fridge temperature surveys all day, managing the queue for photo sessions at the Osaka Marathon, and interning at a venture company. Through these experiences, I realized that the world indeed runs quite casually. Personally, this was quite a shock, as I was inherently serious by nature. Learning that part-time jobs could be so casual was a revelation. Ultimately, everything is done by people, so mistakes are made, and the quality of service varies depending on the individual. It was a profound realization that every aspect of life involves human error and variability. Realizing that everything is made by people is very important. It was an eye-opener that people like me, ordinary humans, are creating society's rules, structures, fun, and interesting things. I learned that since things are made by people, they are never perfect and prone to errors, and from reading and other studies, I learned that those who notice, and skillfully use the imperfections and gaps in these systems tend to benefit. I digressed a bit, but that's my personal take on it. Now, let's summarize the content so far. Maintaining priorities in life makes it less challenging, because having priorities makes it easier to increase the total amount of happiness. The key to setting priorities, as introduced here, involves 2 points. The 2 tips are doing things that can only be done now, and honing some sort of expertise. These are the 2 points. Hiroyuki-san experienced 9 different part-time jobs during his university days, working as a convenience store clerk, in a supermarket deli, at a ramen shop, posting flyers for underground videos, handling calls for a mobile phone company, as a tutor, cleaner, pizza delivery person, and at Sagawa Express. From these jobs, he learned that the world is easygoing, and functions surprisingly well. Companies may seem well organized, but once you're inside, you realize they're not that significant. The world is easygoing and moves in the right direction. According to Hiroyuki-san, when you join as a part-time worker, you realize how easygoing and well-functioning the world is. This experience is quite important. Just by experiencing it, the hurdle to start your own business significantly lowers. You learn the proper workings inside a company. Therefore, people with high pride who dismiss such jobs as boring, without trying them tend to lose out in life, says Hiroyuki-san. He suggests it's better to enjoy everything and approach it with a bit of nonchalance. I personally agree that the world is easygoing and well run. Similarly, many might resonate with this view. I also did various part-time jobs during my university days, like being a tutor, working in an izakaya, an apparel shop, a restaurant kitchen, and even doing day jobs in various costumes, playing with kids, conducting fridge temperature surveys, managing queues at the Osaka Marathon, and interning at a venture company. Through these, I realized the world indeed operates quite casually. Personally, this was quite a shock, as I was inherently serious by nature. Learning that part-time jobs could be so casual was a revelation. Ultimately, everything is done by people, so mistakes happen, and the quality of service varies depending on the individual. I deeply realize that every aspect of life involves human error and variability. Realizing that everything is made by people is very important. It was an eye-opener that people like me, ordinary humans, are creating society's rules, structures, fun, and interesting things. I learned that since things are made by people, they are never perfect and prone to errors, and this is something I learned through reading and other studies. Those who notice and skillfully use the imperfections and gaps in these systems tend to benefit. I digressed a bit, but that's my personal take on it. Now, let's summarize the content so far. Maintaining priorities in life makes it less challenging, as having priorities makes it easier to increase the total amount of happiness. The key to setting priorities, as introduced here, involves 2 points. Doing things that can only be done now and honing a specific skill. These are the 2 points. Hiroyuki-san recommends taking the initiative to do unusual things, as a way to become unique. For example, volunteering as a drink party organizer or class representative. Such special positions often bring benefits, so it's better to raise your hand and try without thinking too much about what comes after. Just give it a try, and if it works out, great. If it doesn't, or if there's a negative experience, it still deepens your understanding of yourself, ultimately benefiting you. One of my favorite quotes, which mentalist Daigo-san once said on a show, is, "What you gain from success is reward, and what you learn from failure is growth." I really resonate with this and often think of it. Taking the initiative in unusual things is similar to this quote. It's better to regret doing something than not doing it at all. If you don't try, nothing happens, but if you take a chance, you learn something, and interesting things can happen. So, I believe the attitude of trying anything enriches your life. By trying unexperienced things, you can become more unique, and, simply put, enjoy life more. Hiroyuki-san says that people who always do the same things in the same way, soon become obsolete and uninteresting. Therefore, consciously reaching out to new knowledge, places, foods, jobs, and relationships makes life more enjoyable and advantageous. Exposure is related to the concept of exposure, which I thought was worth delving into further. This isn't mentioned in the book, but exposure is about continuously engaging in positive activities that cause mild stress. This concept was thoroughly explained in a previous video where I discussed Suzuki Wakaba-san's methods for longevity and youthfulness. Exposure involves continuously challenging oneself in positive activities that cause mild stress, which activates the brain and develops the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex, as I always say, is a crucial part of the brain's higher functions. It's the brain's command center, responsible for motivation, concentration, memory, logical thinking, objective thinking, control of actions and emotions, and communication. Therefore, people with a developed prefrontal cortex are more likely to build good relationships with others, make long-term beneficial choices, rather than being caught up in immediate gains, and consequently, tend to have higher social and economic status. One way to develop this important prefrontal cortex is through exposure, continuously challenging oneself in positive activities that cause mild stress. For instance, new learning, new places, foods, jobs, relationships, sports, travel, art, anything goes. Every daily input stimulates the brain and promotes growth. Activating various parts of the brain through different stimuli is effective. Particularly effective is the stress experienced when striving towards a goal. This positive stress keeps the brain active and vibrant. There are two types of stress, one that ages people and another that rejuvenates. The stress that ages people includes dissatisfaction in relationships and anxiety about life, which repeatedly occupy the mind, resulting in chronic stress. In contrast, the stress that rejuvenates is experienced when striving towards a goal. For example, establishing exercise habits, dieting, organizing life, studying new things, or trying a side job. Any goal that is important to the individual is valid. When facing slightly stressful but positive actions, this stress provides a healthy stimulus to our brains, triggering the hormesis effect. Therefore, stepping out of one's comfort zone and taking risks is essential. It doesn't always have to be a significant challenge, even small ones are effective. For example, consciously using the non-dominant hand, or taking a different route than usual, even creating a day without touching your smartphone, or overcoming small stresses through various experiences is effective. Trying different methods of input is also effective. Reading books for visual input, and listening to audiobooks or audio content for auditory input. Trying different methods stimulates different parts of the brain, activating it effectively. Audiobooks and audio content are great, because you can listen to them while commuting or exercising. In short, there is value in doing new things, whether big or small, and when taking new challenges or risks. A risk meter can be a useful reference. This risk meter is a life improvement technique, used in Stanford University's engineering department. It categorizes risks into 5 types: physical, intellectual, financial, social, and emotional. Assessing which types of risks you are taking, or can take, is an effective way to evaluate. The 5 types of risk are physical, like new sports or skills; intellectual, new learning or idea exchanges; financial, investments in oneself, experiences, or financial investments; social, building new relationships, or reconnecting with old friends; and emotional, overcoming fears and anxieties, such as public speaking or facing examinations. Using the risk meter can help identify which types of risks you're not taking, and can be quite handy. It is suggested that a balanced approach to these 5 types of risks is beneficial. To summarize this segment, experiencing untried things is cost effective, because the value of interesting and unique individuals is increasing in society. Hence, we should actively challenge untried experiences. Activities like new learning, places, foods, jobs, relationships, sports, travel, and arts are all stimuli for the brain's growth. Lastly, let's summarize the overall content. The meaning of life in 1% effort. The premise is that there's no inherent meaning to life, so we should aim to live as enjoyably as possible. This premise guides the discussion. To live enjoyably, 1% effort is effective, focusing on efforts that capture the essence and maintaining free time. Tips for determining life's priorities. Maintaining priorities makes life less challenging, because it helps increase happiness. The keys to setting priorities are to do things that can only be done now, and to hone a specific expertise. Becoming unique. Experiencing untried things is a cost-effective effort towards becoming unique. I personally appreciate Hiroyuki-san's logical and unconventional approach, and have been influenced by him. I recommend his books, which I've discussed in previous videos on this channel. Please check them out for more insights. This concludes the summary of the content discussed in this segment.